Welcome back, everybody. It is the first Monday in May of 2023. And as always, that means there's another episode of my monthly aviation news roundup. So today we're going to be looking at some of the notable aviation news coming from the last month, which would have been April of 2023. A little bit different this time. I don't have my laptop with me, so I'm going to be looking at the computer off to my left here that has kind of my notes for this video so I don't miss or forget anything. And yeah, we'll take a quick look at kind of some of the news that stood out to me and made my interest. So let's see if it's interested to you as well. And as always, my name is Sean, and this is Sean's Aviation. And as always, just before we jump into this video, I want to say thank you to everybody who is out there watching. If you haven't yet, down below, like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell if you want to be notified when I have new content coming out. And as always, again, if you are interested in helping out in a little bit more of a concrete way, down below as well in the description, you'll see a link to my coffee account. You can buy me a coffee. I always have one on the go wherever I am, really. One second. So you can go ahead and do that if you so choose. Please don't feel obligated. I'm not begging for money. I do what I do because I like doing it, and I get to take you along for the ride. That being said, let's jump right into this. We'll take a look at some of the headlines, as I said, that stood out to me. And I think the first one that we really need to talk about is SpaceX Starship Heavy. And it finally launched. Let's see if I have the date down. I did not write the date down. I believe it's actually pretty easy to remember. It was April 20th, 4/20, because Elon Musk has a thing with numbers. So it launched on the morning of April 20th. It was always designed to be a test flight. Elon had been quoted as saying, as long as it doesn't blow up on the launch pad, it's a successful launch. And it launched. And there's a really good video. If you watch Scott Manley's channel, he had a clip in one of his videos of his reaction when the rocket finally started to lift off the pad. And that was very similar to my reaction as it started to actually lift off the pad. And I'll see if I can put the video up here without actually getting a copyright strike or anything against it. So I'll try to put the video up here. If you see it, that's why. If not, there was a copyright issue. But here's the hopefully the video of the moment that that ship actually left the launch pad. So yeah, I mean, it's pretty impressive to watch something that large lift off. It ended up being in the air, I believe, about 2 minutes, and then it started to tumble, and the auto destruct basically was used to destroy the ship to limit any damage downrange. There were a number of engines that had failed on the launch. I believe there were up to 8 at one point. And rumor is, there hasn't been any official word from them yet, but rumor is that most likely some of those engine failures are what caused the loss of control of the ship and the tumbling, especially if as a first launch, you know, if some of the control software couldn't handle the offset thrust. But either way, hopefully we get an update from SpaceX in the near future with kind of what happened. They've been very open with their testing program. Credit to them. Not a lot of companies would be that open to the public with their failures. But they have been, and we'll see what they end up saying on that. But it most likely, again, with some of the video, I'm not going to put all the video up, but the launch tower did not have any type of flame diverter or water trench or anything like that to help control the blast from the engines. And as such, it completely demolished the launch pad. I'll put the picture up because I know I can put the picture up here of what the launch pad looked like. And as you can tell, there's not much left of the concrete. So chunks of concrete just went flying everywhere when it launched. And they damaged some of the storage tanks on site for the fuel. One of the YouTube channels that do, I believe it was NASA Spaceflight, I believe, their channel. One of the YouTube channels that was doing a live stream of the launch, one of their minivans that had a camera mounted to the top of it just got smoked by a chunk of concrete and completely destroyed the van and the camera. So there was a lot of bits of debris flying everywhere, and the theory is a lot of that debris got blown back up into the bottom of the rocket and damaged those engines and caused possibly more than just rocket engines to fail. You might have had a situation where some of the rocket engines failed to gimbal because of damage from concrete chunks, and that might have allowed the rocket to not be able to correct its flight path on the launch and caused it to tumble out of control the way it did and then need to be destroyed. But either way, it was a successful launch. It got all the way basically to the point of separation, and then the separation never happened, and some of the rocket engines never shut off, and then the rocket tumbled, and then it was destroyed. So at the end of the day, lots of data for SpaceX, lots of numbers to crunch, lots of redesigns to happen on both the rocket and the launch pad, and hopefully the next launch will be even more successful. Just gonna check my notes. Yeah, so the only other note I had was just the fact that they were talking about another launch. Elon had said in a few months, stand by for the next launch in a few months. We'll see what happens in terms of redesign, construction timelines, and the FAA with their rights to fly, their permits and stuff like that. So we'll see what kind of long-term delay we're looking at, but hopefully it's not too long, because I am very, very excited with what SpaceX is doing. So moving on to the next topic, we have the Antonov 225 over in the Ukraine. And I don't know if I mentioned it in previous videos, but it got destroyed recently in some of the fighting that happened over in the Ukraine. And Ukrainian officials are now going after Antonov management. One of the managers of the company is being basically prosecuted by the Ukrainian government, saying that he had ample warning, time, and resources to get the 225 airworthy and reposition it to, I want to say, Munich. I didn't write down the city, but one of the German cities. I believe it was either Leipzig or Munich. They could reposition the aircraft there and get it out of harm's way, but basically they refused to do it. And there's also rumors that as the Russians were approaching the airport, the Ukrainian government asked for access to the airport to set up defensive positions, and this Ukrainian manager, refused to give the Ukrainian military access to the airfield to set up defenses. And then as we went and saw, and I'll put the picture up if I haven't shown it already, the 225 was destroyed in the subsequent fighting. The Ukrainian government has promised to go ahead and rebuild it. There was, subsequent to me making these notes, and just in the past couple of days, they have said that they are actively looking. They suspect it'll be about 2 to 3 years once the fighting stops for them to get the next 225 airworthy. There was another fuselage that had been built that was sitting in the Antonov factory, and it just needs to be finished. The wings are basically, they've got all the jigs to build the wings and everything, and they were looking at avionics, and I believe they said they would keep the same engines, but they were looking at upgraded avionics and whatnot and systems on the airframe for the new one to make it even more efficient and able to carry what it needs to do as the world's heaviest and largest cargo plane. And it was instrumental during COVID. If anyone there remembers, there was flying COVID supplies all over the place. It came to Canada, I think, 3 times, and I missed it every time. I wanted to go to Mirabel and get pictures of it landing, and I just never had the schedule just never worked out. I missed it every time. But yeah, it'll be interesting when that thing, if they ever get that second one flying again, because it is instrumental in global heavy lift capability. So moving on to the next one, bit of a different turn for this channel. I'm going to go a little political on the side. The Canadian government recently passed a new passenger bill of rights. Now, on the surface, that sounds great, and a lot of people applaud it, and I applaud the government for trying to fix the problems. There are significant issues with the airline industry, not just in Canada, but globally, and some of it has to come down to the fact that everybody wants cheap flights. So airlines are cutting costs and skimming down to the bare minimum to get the flights done as cheap as possible. But that means that there's no room for error. You've also got a global booking system that is horribly inefficient when you're trying to book flights. It's not a good system. It's antiquated, it's dated, and it doesn't allow the most efficient routing of passengers, which means that extra costs get incurred on all sides when they don't need to be. And the other side is, there is, in my opinion, an unreasonable expectation from the general public in aviation specifically. I mean, if you're on a city bus and your bus gets stuck at traffic in the highway and you're delayed, you don't get compensated. If you're driving down the highway in Ontario, for example, in 401, and you've got a scheduled appointment at the other end of the 401. Say, for example, I have a flight to catch in Toronto and I got to get to Toronto to catch a flight, and I hit an accident or construction on the 401 and I miss my flight. I don't get compensated from the provincial government for delays on the highway. If I'm on a Greyhound bus and it breaks down, I don't get compensated. If I'm on the train and the train breaks down, or another train derails and the line gets blocked, I don't get compensated. I don't get cash payouts. I might get a free ticket to rebook later, but I don't get cash payouts. But this is where we're going with the aviation industry, and you know, they want, and they already have a system where you get cash payouts for delays, and the new system is even more strict, even more, you know, specific on what airlines have to do. I mean, if you have a flight to catch with Air Canada and there's a snowstorm and your flight gets delayed or canceled because of a snowstorm, then the airline has to pay you. But that delay is not the airline's fault. That delay could be because of long lines at the de-icing, or short staffing at the de-icing, or, you know, mechanical issues with the airport plows, and then the runways aren't plowed in a timely manner, and then there's backups. And it's not just the airline. It's not the airline's control. So much of what happens in the global flying is not just the airline. You've got the airport authority, you've got technology, you've got bridges, you've got plowing, you've got ground handlers, you've got fuelers, you've got de-icers, you've got navigation systems. You know what I mean? You have a strike with ATC in France, which is currently happening. The ATC in France is on strike. So flights are delayed. So you go to get on your flight to fly, and all of a sudden, oh no, French ATC is closed. We're diverting flights to a different set of airspace, and that means we can only fly, you know, 2/3 the number of aircraft, so there'll be delays. Well, now Air Canada has to pay you because France went on strike, and you can see where I'm going with this. It's not the airline's control, and they're being a lot more specific on what type of delays happen and when airlines have to pay, and they're upping the payouts. And again, it sounds great, but why are the airlines being singled out over every other form of transportation when it comes to this? And the other side of that is, at the end of the day, they're just passing those costs on to you. If they look and they say, you know, okay, well, if 5% of our flights are going to include some sort of a delay payout, and it's going to cost us X number of millions of dollars a year to pay it out, then we have to raise all the tickets across the board to make up that extra X number of $1 million. So all it does is cause flying to be more expensive, and everybody pays. You pay for it at the end of the day. It's not free money. Anyways, I mean, airline industry is already very slim profit margins, very slim profit margins. So like a delayed flight, they lose money before they even have to pay out to you. Just a flight being delayed because of whatever, you know, that will end up, for the most part, causing an airline to lose all of its money, because now there's delays at the other end, and they might have to pay a penalty at the other airport because they arrived late and they're not at the slot time that was arranged. Or customs, they might have to pay extra to have customs stay out to clear all of the passengers. The baggage handlers might need to be paid more because they're staying past their, you know, regular quitting time, and they got to be paid more to stay around, stick around and do the bags. So like, there's already costs incurred by an airline when there's a delay, and to add more costs on top of that, you're not making the system any better. You're not making it any easier. You're not creating a system that works. You're creating a system that is less efficient and more expensive. And I don't understand how that's better for the average flying public. You roll the dice, you take the chances. You book a flight, you might get canceled. That's the way it is. So payouts don't make sense. I think in terms of making laws that say the airline has to do a certain amount of work to get you rebooked, you know, providing meals, providing sleeping. If your flight gets canceled, if it's a late night flight that gets canceled and you're stuck at the airport all night, they have to provide some form of accommodation. You need to have a place to sleep. You need to have food. I don't disagree with that. But cash payouts because of a delay, I think is too much. And I think you're going to see significant costs incurred by airlines that are going to cause certain airlines to fail when they shouldn't be because of the overburdening of this. But anyways, I've rambled enough on this one. But either way, it sounds good. A lot of people are going to be happy that there's this in place. I don't think it's going to work out in the long run. I think you're going to see more expensive flying, and you're going to see some airlines end up either canceling and just cutting some certain flights that are always delayed, or you're just going to see some airlines just fail. And that's my prediction. We'll see what happens. So looking at events, upcoming events, there's nothing new. I'm not going to go talk about every event, every air show. Like I said, I'm focusing mostly on the stuff that's around Ontario, Ottawa, and the shows that I are going to be visiting. There's not much else that's been announced. I know tickets for Aero Gatineau Ottawa, the air show here in Ottawa, go on sale on, I believe it's May 18th. So if there's anybody in the area looking to go to that show, those tickets are available right now. There's snowbirds. There's a CF-18 tactical demo. It's not a full demo, just a tactical demo. And we have a MiG-17, a Polish, now it's not owned by Polish, but it's a privately owned MiG-17 from the US that are painted up in Polish markings. It will be at the show, plus all of the vintage wings aircraft. There'll be a lot going. I've been told to expect an interesting mix of aircraft for this year. I believe their theme is Legends of the Sky. So I think there's going to be some really cool planes at that show. So expect some more announcements from that coming out soon. London, again, no real new announcements out of London. They've got, actually, I think there might be one. I think they've announced the C-17 demo has been announced since the last time I did this video. So they're looking at the Snowbirds, the F-22 demo with a heritage flight with a P-51, and the U.S. Air Force East Coast C-17 demo. And again, they are always an amazing lineup, so I'm very excited to see what else they manage to put out. Thunder over Michigan, no real new announcements from them, other than the fact that it's going to be a good show. The lineup is really, really good. I'll put a link in the description down below to the list of what's flying at Thunder over Michigan. So if there's anybody in that area that's interested in going, the lineup is amazing this year. And there's always a lot of stuff that shows up that isn't on the list, a lot of last minute stuff that they managed to squeeze in. So it's very, very exciting for that. The big news for air shows is 2024. So next year, 2024, is the 100th anniversary of the RCAF. They were formed April 1st of 1924. So 2024 will be the official 100th anniversary of the RCAF, and there are big plans. I haven't heard anything official from the government, but they have a whole website. They are planning a lot of participation, a lot of Air Force participation in public shows, a lot more than you've seen in the past. They're really ramping this up to get out there and do a lot of stuff. So suspect to see a lot of that. Here in Ottawa for Aero Gatineau, we've got the Snowbirds, and we have the U.S. Air Force Thunderbirds scheduled to be here for the show in Ottawa. Now, unofficially, there's been nothing official that I've heard, but I've heard rumors in the interwebs that the Red Arrows, the RAF Red Arrows, and the French Patrouille de France are both planning Canadian tours in 2024. What month? For how long? I don't have those answers right now, but even if it's like a 1 month hop over, quickly hit up a bunch of sites and leave, you know, you have the possibility of a really, really interesting air show season next year in Canada, and especially here in Ottawa. If it being Ottawa, I'm sure Trenton is probably going to have some big event. The Air Force was officially formed, I believe it was Borden where the Air Force was officially started, but Trenton was one of the early bases that they built back in the 1930s. So I suspect Trenton will have a big event. There'll be a lot happening here in Ottawa as the capital. So I'm fingers crossed that we're going to see the Patrouille and the Red Arrows here in Ottawa. And there's a good chance that they'll also be here with the Snowbirds, and that's 3. And if they plan it for the air show in September, we get 4 with the Thunderbirds. So it could be a very interesting year. So I'll be keeping you all up in the loop for what I hear for next year. But that about wraps up the events. I feel like there was something else that I wanted to talk about, and I can't remember what. I remember what it is now. Incidences. Now, there wasn't any significant incidences, no real big follow-ups, no significant, usually I talk about like a crash or some, investigation from a crash that kind of changes aviation safety and everything like that. There hasn't been much, but the one thing I do want to bring up is the B-17. So a few years ago, the EAA, the Experimental Aircraft Association, had their B-17 aluminum overcast down in Florida. And during a routine pre-flight inspection, one of the crew members found a crack in the wing joint flange on the fuselage. And I'll try to find, if I find a picture of it, I'll put it up here. Not of the actual crack, but a drawing of the flange. And it's basically the attach point that's mounted to the fuselage that the wings attach to. And they found a crack on that flange. And it wasn't the main flange. There's 2 big ones where the spars connect, and then there's a few smaller ones that just use separate connections just to help lock everything in place. And it was one of those smaller ones, so it wasn't necessarily a structural problem, but any crack on an aircraft needs to be investigated. So the EAA They grounded their plane. They did the investigations. It was down in Florida getting repairs done. While it was there, it was involved in a hurricane, and it was damaged a little bit more by the hurricane. It wasn't significant. It wasn't, grounding. It wasn't end of flying. It was just, there was extra damage that needed to be repaired. And the decision was made to truck it back to Wisconsin, get it out of Florida, get it out of the path of hurricanes, get it back into Wisconsin, into Oshkosh at their main hangar, and get it rebuilt. So they did that. They did that earlier this year. And then, not too long after that, the Yankee Air Museum. So a couple of weeks ago, earlier in April, the Yankee Air Museum put out a press release stating that they were parking their B-17 for the rest of this year's flying season, canceling all flights out of abundance of caution, and out of the potential AD, airworthy directive, coming out of from the FAA based on what was found with the EAA's bird. And the rumor mill was saying that the FAA basically told any operator of a B-17, get your B-17 to an airport that you're okay having it parked at, and expect them to be grounded shortly with an AD. No word on what the AD was. There was a lot of talk online about wing spars in general, and I don't necessarily think that's what's happening. There was one that came out decades ago about wing spars, that they all needed some work done on them, and all of them that are flying have had that work done. And as the incident with the EAA wasn't a wing spar itself, but a wing attach point on the fuselage, there might just be a matter of strengthening those attach points, and it's a quick amount of work versus all new spars. Or it might just be an inspection regime. Park your planes, inspect these parts. As long as they're inspected and safe, you can keep flying. But they said basically that until that work was done, the 17s couldn't fly, and they didn't want operators to be out in the middle of nowhere on a tour. The Commemorative Air Force, they go on tour. They fly their planes all across the U.S. So if they're out and about and they're at some little airport doing a tour and all of a sudden it's grounded, well, now what? So they're saying get them back home, get them to a hangar where you can park them for a while and do work and stand by. So that hasn't come out yet. Time will tell what that says. But there's a potential of basically for the year of 2023 and maybe into the future, we may not see B-17s flying for a while until the work gets done, depending on what amount of work. I don't suspect it's going to be full grounding forever. I don't think it's even going to be a long amount of work. I don't see full resparring of wings or anything like that. I see, just either inspect and confirm, or it might be just replacing and strengthening a certain part of the plane that these cracks were found in. So that wraps up kind of all of that. So as always, if there's anything out there that you think I should be including, if you think I missed something, send it to me. I'll have the link down below in the description. There's an email. You can send an email there, and you can let me know what you think I should be adding to the next video. If I missed it, I will gladly update down the road. I'll add something to the next video for this month, whatever you want, if I think it's a worthy story that I missed. And that even goes throughout the regular time. If you see a story and you're like, ooh, Sean should know about this, send me an email, and I'll go through and add them. So at this point, I will wrap this up. So thank you everybody for watching. I appreciate all of the support that I have out there from you guys watching these channels and everything else. And stay tuned for the next one, and we'll see you all later.
Thank you for watching, guys, and as always, if you are interested in any of the content you see, you can access my website at www.shans-aviation.com. You can see all the latest pictures of aircraft and museums and the build logs of all of my current models and past models on that site. And if you're interested in any of this content, please click the subscribe button here on YouTube to follow more. Thank you very much, and see you guys next time.